We have courses in economic justice, health justice, and disability justice as part of our program. So again, we welcome questions, suggestions. Often it's our students that suggest link ups with our local organizations. This is our program, and we need to keep building it together. I'll just say a few quick words because we have a really packed program today. Post-truth schooling aims to dull the capacity of young folks like you to think critically and challenge systemic inequality. Fortunately, resistance to this dystopian vision is springing up already. We stand here in solidarity against racism, misogyny, xenophobia, hate, and the empire. We must recognize the common themes presented in the story of Palestine with stories of other colonial projects in India, the United States, Sudan, and the Congo. I want to reaffirm our program's values of acknowledging multiple perspectives, with our broader goal being to interrogate the impact of human choices in order to imagine a more just world. We want our students to go beyond the binary way of thinking, to invite complexity, to show how many different factors converge to shape the events we still grapple with today. We believe that social justice education has that potential to empower communities, resist and disrupt oppressive power structures, and work for solidarity. Our goal is for students to develop and deepen their understanding of who they are by supporting them in broadening their horizons, building passions, and finding their purpose. Today, we are especially grateful to our brother from Ethnic Studies, Dr. Danny Cornejo. We're always looking to collaborate with other programs, and also always thankful to our brother from ECE, Professor Juan Huerta, who lets us offer all of these events in a hybrid format. And as always, we are so thankful to have our DVC community here supporting us, our students. This is all for you. And with that, I will invite Dr. Albert Ponce to tell you more about our program.
Welcome, everybody. I'll be very brief. We have a very special guest that we've got to jump right into this. But I just want to bring attention to the moment that we exist in and the role of social justice education and the role of education in general is about transformation. It is about changing the world that exists. Because the world that exists, as we're all living in unprecedented times, it's not doing so well. But we are that check on the powerful, the rich, the wealthy, who think that they can construct and shape the world, time, the way that we know and see the world. So today we're going to think about positioning ourselves from that underside of colonialism, or the conditions of coloniality, from those who have endured the force of violence. And that violence happens when they take away our stories, when they take away our books here in higher education. So we must not only walk away from this event thinking about what we learned and go on about our day, but what did we learn? How can we enact it in our everyday lives, challenge the hegemony of the West and of those who are able to colonize the earth for themselves and fence it off and build profits and build and extract the value from not only humans, but from the earth, what's beneath it, and even from space. Like the universe is to be conquered. And that's where we have to stand up collectively and say no. We know many of our students are facing violence on campus. There are lots of resources that I put in the back. But for the DVC Dreamers Alliance, we have the DVC Pride community. Scan the code, get tuned in, and look out for our next event on May Day, May 1st. We will be celebrating our Festival of Resistance Festival out in the Commons with music, art, and a collective effort to challenge the powerful. So thank you. Now, I'm now going to hand it over to Dr. Danny Cornejo, Chair, Professor of Ethnic Studies, to introduce our special guest.
Yo si mi nombre no tengo apaquia, aguada, osurawa, doeme de guima, mari lamia, qualitonali hui. What no toca, Dr. Dania, Atekpatzin Cornejo. I want to just take a moment. This is cutting out. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we're on. These John Aloni people, Wekma Aloni people, Bay Niwak territory, Yokut territory, multiple nations living together here for thousands of years since time immemorial. The person that is going to come up here means so much to me in my heart. When we get an opportunity to speak with elders, we have to understand that we're speaking with people who are almost like living archives. They have the knowledge not only from their own lives, but they have intergenerational knowledge that has been passed down from their ancestors. And you have an opportunity to learn from that. And so as you listen, I really want you to think of questions. If something comes up that you're interested in, really think that through, because we have a golden opportunity to speak to an elder here. My uncle, my tlatli, David Atekpatzin Young, came into my life when I was a completely different person. I was around your age, my early 20s. Those who are my students know a little bit of what I was like in my early 20s. Suffice it to say, I was kind of a mess. I was kind of a hot mess in my early 20s. And I was lucky enough to have a solid male role model who kept me accountable, who pointed me towards a road that did not involve drinking or partying or womanizing or anything else like that, and put me on another path. And I'm eternally grateful for that, particularly because as men, oftentimes we don't have a lot of solid male role models in our life. We have a lot of unsolid male role models, right? But in my life, it's literally a handful, maybe like 5. It's my father, a couple of uncles, my grandfather, and my tío Ate. My tío Ate has written multiple books, so he's a scholar in the conventional sense, but he's also led our community in Colorado for upwards of 30 years, if not longer, in the Mexicayotl tradition. He carries Lakota altars as well, understands Apache ways as well. And so you have an opportunity to hear from and learn from an elder who really carries some beautiful knowledge. And so I'm gonna stop talking. Please give a warm round of applause to my tío, to my uncle, David Atekpatzin Young.
Really. Image of us. Ano to Atekpatzin, naniwag sa Hawaii, older teachers. Chinachika Moma lan Isahilo pan Nahua. En español entonces. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes esta tarde. Esto no sirve muy bien, lo voy a pagar. Es un placer estar aquí con ustedes esta tarde o esta mañana en este día tan frío. Yo vengo de Colorado, en un lugar que para nosotros es Tehuayo o Indeta. A ver las manos que hablan español, un poco. A ver las manos de los que no hablan español. A ver. Entienden un poquito. Okay, I'll talk to you in English.
I'm going to talk to you today about 3 calendars. The Tonalpoali, Xipoali, and Wayawali. People say Aztec calendars, and they don't always, they don't really know what that is. They have an idea of what it is, but I'm going to talk to you today and give you a rounded out idea of this. You speak English because it's the only language you know for some people. I speak English because it's the only language you know. Okay. Just a reminder, you're on native territory. And, you know, I hear a lot of times brown people saying, well, you should speak Spanish, and I do. You should speak Spanish. It's like, that's an invader's language too, just like English. You should speak whatever indigenous language you come from. Tlen moneki se calendario. Who needs a calendar? Yeah, go ahead. Who needs a calendar? You do? You do, huh? All of you need a calendar? You need a calendar because of the way society works today, right? But who really needs a calendar? I mean, needs a calendar. I don't mean you need to get to work. You need one? Go ahead. Farmers? You know, if you are, do you farm? No. No, okay. So if you farm, the seasons don't change a whole lot here in California where you're at. Where I come from, Colorado, they change pretty radically. But you know when to plant in Colorado, you know when to plant because the leaves start coming out on the trees. First, the buds will come out, and right now the leaves are just starting to come out. After the leaves come out, there's going to be one more snow. After that snow, you can plant. Now, if we're using a calendar, it's May 10th, Mother's Day, right? But the farmers don't really need it. If you really are a farmer and you're a good farmer, you don't need a calendar because you're in tune with the seasons. You don't need a calendar. You know when to plant. So who does need one? Doctors? Why would a doctor need a calendar? Okay, but that has to do with business and capitalism, right? Showing up on time. It's important to show up on time. But only women need a calendar. I'm serious. Why do women need a calendar?
Menstrual cycle.
Menstrual cycle, that's right. Why else?
Fertility.
That's part of the menstrual cycle.
Well, yeah.
Sa no pasiwame moneki se calendario kenke. Kiampa welis kiitas kesti metzlikipia. So because of her menstrual cycle. And because we need to know how long the baby's going to be in the womb, right? That's it. Women need a cycle, and the first people that started counting time were women. Men have borrowed the calendar, and we all use a calendar. We all use a Christian calendar today. They call it Gregorian, they call it the Julian calendar. It's Christian calendar. It's based on the life of Christ. But the only people that need a calendar are women, right? This is different, and it's not in English. It says, Tonalpoawi elis calendario tlen tlami se tlapowayowali tlen siwat. So to know what the cycle is of the women and to know how long the baby's going to be in the womb. That's what we need a calendar for. And I give you this as a root, as a place to begin, because that's how this calendar works, right? It started with women. Men took it and borrowed it and used it for other things, but it started with women. But before we go there, I need to talk to you a little bit about the registral system. I think that's how you say it. Do you know what that is? Base 20, right? You have 20 digits, 10 fingers, 10 toes, 20 digits. It's an easy way to think about things. So using a base 20 instead of a base 10. Now, one of the things that they will say about the people of Mesoamerica is that they had a 0. But I need to correct that. Come on in. It's okay. You're late. Come on in. Find a seat. There's some seats up here too. All the way up here, so everyone can see where you were that was late. All of you can hear me back there, right? So my voice is loud enough. So let me talk a little bit about this counting system so that you understand how this counting system works. And like I said, people claim that the people of Mesoamerica used the numbers, had the number 0, but it's not a 0. That's not actually correct. And see, so they show it here on this actually chart as a 0, right? This is it represents a seashell, right? Kind of a seashell shape. But it doesn't, it's not 0. So if we count on these are easy, right? You can follow these because they're pretty simple. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And then what we do is we start moving places in the same way that we have ones and tens and hundreds and thousands, right? We also have places in how this is done, but it's vertical. So this is only a placeholder, but what it means is that it's a complete count. In fact, the word for it is sem poali. Poa is to count. The verb poa is to count. Sem means to complete something, right? But it's also se, which means the number 1. So there are only 10 words for the numbers in Nahua, right? In the Nahua language. There's a number for 1 through 5, and then you're going to do addition. 5 plus 1, 5 plus 2, 5 plus 3, 5 plus 4, 10, there's another number. And then you count 10 plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4, 15, there's a number for that, kashtoli. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you finish the count, sempoali. Now, when you go above this, let's jump here, right here. This is ompoali, 2 full counts, or 2 times 20. So now you're doing mathematics. Up here, you're adding, down here, you're doing your times, right? So 2 times 20 is 40, right? Let's find another one down here. Here we have, so this jumps up to the next. So we're going to count in, on the first level, it's 1 through 20. Second level is 20 to 400. Third level is 8,000. And beyond that, we're not counting much. We have the numbers for it. And you just have numbers for those very specifically, right? So down here, we have a full count. So we know that the next level is going to be times 20. So this is 5 and 5. That's 10 times 20, which is 200. Is that right? 5 times 20. I'm sorry, 10 times 20, 200. And then this up here is 8,000. So we have 8,000, 9, 10. So that's 8,000. Is that correct? Yes. 8,000, and then 2. I'm sorry, this is 400. I'm getting all confused. So 20s, and this is 10 times 20. And this is 1 times 8,000, so 8,400. Does that make sense? So this is how the counting system works. But I want to talk about this a little bit, just so you get a sense of what this is. But again, breaking up the myth, this is not 0. This is a complete count. That's all it is. It's a space holder. Does that make sense? But it means you completed that particular section. The Mayan did it, they drew it differently. So this is a Mayan way of saying the same thing, right? There's another example, because Mayan, and the thing with the Mayan writings, you can actually read it. It's done in syllables. But what this does is this is telling you this is 0 moon, this is 0 winal, and this is 0 katun, right? Because this is the second half of it. And so it's in 2 syllables. Make sense? So that one we can read. We know what the Mayan histories are because we can read them. They left it in stone. Again, here's another example, but I don't want to dwell on this too much. But where this comes important is when you look, this is from the Codex Mendoza. These are the numbers. This is all the names you have for the numbers. The rest is addition and subtraction. You can break them down. You understand that when you're using 5, it's 1/4 of a full count. When you're talking about 10, it's half of a full count, right? So you also have fractions in it. But let's give you an example. Right here are banners. Each one of these banners represents 20, right? So we have 5 banners, 5 times 20, that's 100 of these things. This is an account of of the tribute the people were supposed to give to the empire. There's another one here, let's see, right here, this is a feather. I don't know how well you can see it. The feather represents 400. So whatever this item is that's in here, they had to give 400 of them. This is the next one, which is Shikipili, says Shikipili. Shikipili is, it looks like a bag, but it's a bag that they used to carry copale. Copale is something that we use to smoke, to create smoke for smudging. And this one, they were to give 8,000 of these, right? That's what was required. So this is, they give this to the other people who pay tribute, and this is what you owe us. This is how you do it. So that's what this is, right? We know this because the Spaniards came along later and wrote some stuff in the margins there. So this is how the counting was done for these things. Does that make sense? This is writing. This is specific writing. I have this picture here because I want to make a point. This you see as a big, colorful, these lights kind of bright in here. This you can see as a very colorful space. This is in the Pro Street Mall in Boulder. Sometimes when we look at something and we look at it through, say, a yellow lens, this is what it looks like, right? We're missing something. Or maybe we look at it through a sort of red lens and the colors don't come through here real good, but you get the idea, right? Or maybe we look at it through a blue lens. But when we're looking at stuff, when we're looking at life, and we're seeing life through our lenses, our own personal lenses, and particularly when we have so many lenses that everything just looks black and white. It looks like a binary. And this is how we see the world. When in fact, the world is filled with color and filled with diversity, right? So we need to be careful about approaching different cultures, approaching different information, approaching different people, different experiences, and having an open mind such that we remind ourselves, perhaps my lenses, I'm looking through my lenses and I'm not seeing things the way they might be, right? Just a little reminder to us. So there are 3 calendars that are used in Mesoamerica. Tonal has multiple meanings, but for the most part, it just means day, right? Day count, there's the word Powali, to count. She, Powali, count of years. And the way Yowali, the big, huge cycle. I'll get to that in a moment. So those 3 calendars. So here's the Aztec calendar. When you think about the Aztec calendar, this is it. I know you're thinking of other things, but this is it. Let me show you how it works. There are 2 numbers that are used to make the calendar work. 20, right? And we have the 20 figures here, 10 here, 10 here, 20, and the number 13, right? When you put these numbers together, what is 13 times 20? 260. If we think about this, the first 13 days, a woman is fertile, or she's in that part of her cycle. The next 13 days, she's passing the egg, so she's not fertile, right? So 13 and 13 is 26. How long is on the Julian calendar, how long is a month? 28 days, 28, 30 days, something like that, right? That's a month. What's the lunar cycle? It's 27 days. Okay, so the Christian calendar is 28. The Mesoamerican calendar is 26. Neither of them are precise, but it doesn't matter, it's just not precise anyway, right? The movement of the earth, the movement of the moon, all these things, none of them are precise anyway. But this is getting pretty close. And it's a good number. So we're going to use 13. 13, you're fertile, 13, you're not. The woman's using this calendar, right? And it gives the full cycle of the woman's moon. And when you add that up against 20, now it gives you how long the baby's in the womb. Got that? 13 days. 260. And here's the interesting thing. Remember I was telling you the mathematics? Maklakli, that's 10, and 3 20s. 10 times 3 20s. 10 times 3 20s gives you 260, right? It's mathematics. So now we have an idea of the woman's cycle and the gestational cycle. That's what this calendar is. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with anything else. It has nothing to do with the movement of the sun. it's related to the movement of the moon because the women's cycles are related to the moon. It will kind of count Venus's movement. And if you know about Venus and you study astrology, sometimes it's the evening star, sometimes it's the morning star, and sometimes it's hidden, right? That's about 260 days. So it'll give you these counts, but they're not fully accurate, right? Now, the way that you do this in order to keep the count of this is you're going to start with 13 days, and you can count 13 days. You're going to start up here, Sesipatli, and you're going to count 13 days. Each one of these has a name, right? And so you're going to count there are a total of 20, but you're only going to count to 13. So when you get to 13, you're going to start with the number 1 again. 1. And you're going to count all the way around. And when you're done counting, you get to 260. Ingenious, right? It's an ingenious mathematical way of counting. And so what happens is, if you notice, when you count here, Sesipatli, that's the first one, and then you're going to end with 13. The next one right there, that's called Ocelo, which means like a jaguar. So 14, that's 1, right? So let's go back. We're going to start with jaguar, with Sipatli here, which is like a crocodile. You're going to count 13 days, and then guess what? Here's your 14th day, which is the beginning of the next trecena. You count back and you go here. You count back and you go here. You count back and you go here. So this is the way of counting the days all the way till you get up to the 260th day up here. Make sense? And then it starts all over again. That's how that calendar works. Got it? Got the mathematics of it right. This is what they look like. So here's the first day. This is what the actual trecenas look like. It's called a trecena, which means 13 days. So the trecena starts over here, counts all the way up, and then you go to the next one. Counts all the way through here and all the way up. And then you go to the next one. Counts through here, 1, all the way up. So what happens is, within this cycle, you don't get back to 1 alligator again until after 260 days. It's just using the numbers 13 and 20 in such a mathematical way that it gives you a calendar. Again, based on the woman's cycle. Make sense? Ingenious, huh? Now, embedded in this is all kind of information. So if you're born on this trecena, if you're any one of these days and you're born on this day, then now it becomes like astrology. So you're under the sign of Tonati, and this is a dual sign. This top part of Tonati is the sun. But this top part of Tonati is masculine, this bottom part of Tonati is feminine. But the deities, and there are many names and many deities in the Mesoamerican mythologies, or in their stories, the deities are all intrinsically masculine and feminine, right? They're not one or the other. And so you understand that. So there's a lot of writing here. This is Kali. This means house. It's also one of the signs. It's right here, see? But this house is smoking. It's on fire. These are some twins that are there, but this is going to tell you a lot of stuff. So they start to use this information to tell you, if you're born on this day, then this is what we can tell you in the same way that astrology does. If you're a Capricorn or you're a Sagittarius, you're something else, right? We'll give you all this information. Here's an interesting one. This is Chalchitlique, and that means skirt of jade. Skirt of jade is a reference to terrestrial waters, not the rain, not necessarily the ocean, but the terrestrial waters, so ponds and lakes and those kind of places and rivers, right? And so you can see the river and the water coming out here, right? These are often symbols for war. These are the darts that were used in the atlat, where they toss the darts. And so these are often symbols for war, and that's what it's talking about, conflict in essence here. So here's what you look at that you usually think of as the Aztec calendar, right? This is a tonal machio. If you translate this, mati means information, it means knowledge. Yot is an abstractor, right? Table-ness, chair-ness, happiness, it's an abstractor. So machiot is knowledge. Tonal, knowledge of the days. But embedded in this particular entity here is also the history of the Aztec people. And we're living today in the fifth world. This is the fifth world. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's called Nahua or Li. One represents water, one represents fire, one represents earth, one represents wind, one represents earth. And so there are a whole lot of stories all around that. I'm not going to get into it, but it's just an idea. So what this really is, this is a compact disc with a lot of information on it, right? About the cosmology. There was no word for it back then, but there was in Nahuatl, Mexicayotl, cosmology of the people. Got it? And these are broken down in the different directions. So what you do is you divide this into quarters, and each quarter has a representation of the west, the south, the east, and the north. And so that helps to, one of the things that it does, and I do want to bring this out. So this is the creation story of the people, and what they say is that there were 4 worlds that preceded this one. The first world was a world of water, and you know, one of the deities created. They're like, nah, that's no good. And so the other ones destroy it, and then they build another world, the world of earth, and another world that doesn't work, and one of wind and one of fire. What happened with all of these 4 worlds, and here's the real teaching in all of this. You can forget about all the details of it, but the teaching is, in all the preceding worlds that were dominated by one of the elements, there was an imbalance. The world was out of balance. And it wasn't until the 5th world when they assigned to each of the 4 worlds a little piece of time, 1/4 of time. And they all get to share that 1/4 of time. Now the world is in balance because no one entity dominates. And that fits to our world today. We have a world with multiple people, multiple cultures, multiple ideas, multiple ways of doing things. But when one particular entity decides it wants to dominate, it creates an imbalance. It creates an imbalance. So here's the teachings from our ancestors that said, you can't do that. You need to give everyone equal representation and equal place at the table, as we say today. So now we'll go into the other calendar. This is a calendar of the count of years. But this isn't a single year, it's 52 years. Because now we're going to start to use the same numbers. We're going to use 13 once again. And you count them here in the 13s, right? These are dots, these are 13s. And you're going to break the years down to just 4 years. One of the years is rabbit, one is reed, one is a knife, and one is a house. That's it, just 4 years. When you count 4 years against the number 13, you come up with the number 52. So now that completes. We think of 100 years, a century as a full count, right? In this way, it's 52 years. But how do you distinguish one 52 years from another 52 years? Well, you have a special ceremony, call it a new fire ceremony. And you name those ceremonies. And that's how you keep account of the 52 years. In the middle of this is, so this also represents 4 directions. This is, if we were to take it, in Western world, the top is north, right? In indigenous worlds, this is east. The top is east because we're facing the sun, right? It makes sense. And so these are the entities, or 2 of the deities that represent the east. This is Tonati, this is the sun right here. This is Xiteucli. Xiteucli is fire, represents the fire. You have the women. So we have the place of the east where the sun comes up. You have the place of the west where the sun goes down, which is the place of women. The place of thorns, which is this is the place of thorns, which is the south, and then place of which is the north. The thing with this is you have to take it and you have to turn it up, right? So we're used to looking at it down, but you take it and it's up, and now these 2 directions switch places. But that's what that is. So this is a map of the world and a way of counting the years over time of what to expect, because each of these years give us different outcomes. Some are good years, some are bad years. And this is the way we do it. Once again, we're counting 4 years, house, rabbit, reed, and knife. Here's another example. This comes out of Diego Duran. And so there's an error in this. This is what was drawn, and this isn't actually the old codices. So we're going back to some documents that existed 500 years ago. And the way this one works, it starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It goes all the way around, right? But there's an error in this. It'll probably take you a while to find it. So I'll help you with it. That should be the number 13, and that's number 14. Right, so when they're drawn out, they made a mistake. So this is how you count the years, every 52 years. Make sense? So this is the calendar now. I know you're used to using this, but that's what that is. So now what they did is they took this calendar that the women were using that was only 260 days, and they decided to add 100 days to it, plus 5. That gives us now 365 days. Now we can use the same calendar the women were using and count the years, count a full year. Does that make sense? And the way they did that is the 20 days that they were using, the 20 counts on both sides, they now make those into months, and there are 18 of them. 18 months times 20 days gives us 365 days. Well, 360 days, but with a leftover 5 days. And those leftover 5 days are like a week, like a vacation. You don't do anything on those days. It's called Nemontemi. It's just like days off. You don't count. You just sit back, kick back. Don't do anything serious. Don't do anything important. And so then they named each of the months, and that's what these months are. Now, there's a point I want to make about this. You see here that according to Duran, Diego Duran, he says that the calendar aligns on March 1st, that's when this calendar, year calendar begins, right? But Sahagún says that no, it starts on February 2nd, right? And why people need to align up their calendars is beyond me, but that's what they're trying to do here. So these are the 20 months. But here's the thing. This is if you go to Mexico City and you look out to the east, there's some mountains out there. There are 2 mountains in particular you'll see. They're both volcanoes. One's called the White Woman, the other one's called the Smoky Mountain. But off over the side, right in the middle, if you were in Mexico City on the top of the pyramids, here's Mexico City. Out there are all these mountains, right? There's White Woman right over there. I think the other one's a little further away. But right here is a mountain that's called Tlaloc. Tlaloc means rain, right? It's a deity of rain. So you could use this, you're here in Mexico City, right in the middle, you're looking east, there are the mountains, and you can use that mountain actually to set the clocks again. So that's what this is. So how do we make up for the fact, because what we do in the Christian calendars, we have a leap year, right? We add an extra day. We're trying to reset the calendar. Well, they did this with this particular site that happens to be on that mountain. And what they did is, this is the point that we're looking at, right? This is on the eastmost area. If you're looking at it to the east, it's down there on the end. And when the sun comes up in February, around the 22nd of February, the sun comes right over that stone. What do? You take your calendars and you reset them to make sure that it's accurate. It's not accurate with the Christian calendar, it's accurate with the sun, with the revolution of the earth around the sun. Does that make sense? So this is how you do it. So we're now in a new year, and people celebrate the new year today on December 12th. The Mexica community celebrates it on March 12th. On March 12th, they celebrate, it starts the new year. So right now we're in the new year that's called 13 House, right? That's the year we're in. Well, my point in all of this is calendars are arbitrary. We make them up and we agree to them. This is called a social contract. We agree to many social contracts. Some of you are here because you made a social contract with your teachers to be here, right? Social contracts, we make them all the time with our friends, we make them with our societies, we make them with the world. And so our social contract, what the Mexica community has decided is on this day, on March 12th, we're going to celebrate the new year, right? But it's arbitrary. All of these are arbitrary. We just made them up because none of these counts are accurate anyway. And here's how I'll make a point. There's a celebration that people have in Mexico City. It's a big day in Mexico City. It's December 12th. What is December 12th? Dia de la Virgen, no? So the Day of the Virgin Mary. And what is it actually on the Christian calendar, on the Catholic calendar? What is that day? Yes. It is actually the conception of the Virgin Mary. The conception, not the birthday. Immaculate Conception, right? So it's when the Virgin Mary was conceived. So they have put that on the Christian calendar as December 12th, okay? So then they come here, they're hanging out for a while, they invade Mexico, they're hanging out for a while. And on that particular day, December 12th, they find out that, hey, these Aztecs are celebrating something. And they're having a big, huge festival. It must be for the Virgin Mary, right? But the problem is what they were actually celebrating was Panquetzalitzli, which is Huitzilopochtli, which is the sun. So it's the movement of the sun on the winter solstice. But the problem was that their calendar, the Christian calendar, was off by 10 days. So they have since adjusted the calendar, moved it back 10 days so that it's aligning correctly. And it just happens to fall December 12th, what was the solstice celebration for the Aztec people followed the same date, and it's now celebrated on the 12th. So people in Mexico are celebrating the Day of the Virgen, of the Virgin Mary, but they were actually celebrating the solstice ceremony, which was for Huitzilopochtli. Interesting how these things get confused, right? It was because the calendars were off. So the third calendar, so that's two calendars. Here's the third one. If you take, I'm gonna do this. These keys. We have so many vehicles. I want you to think of a top. Just take this quarter. What's that quarter going to do? It's going to spin, and as it spins, it starts to slow down. As it starts to slow down, what does it begin to do? It starts wobbling, doesn't it? Right? So the spin isn't precisely in the center anymore, it starts wobbling, right? That's what the Earth does. And that wobble of the Earth, in order for it to move from one place all the way back around, one full wobble, takes a little over 25,000 years. But our people counted it. And the way they counted it is they used something outside of our solar system as a measuring point. They used the Milky Way. So they could use the Milky Way because that's not part of this system, our solar system. They could use that as a measuring point, and they were able to count over the course of, where's the correct number? Someplace up here, 5,125.172 years. So when you're looking up at the North Star right now, you see Polaris. But Polaris is not always the North Star. 5,000 years from now, it's going to be a different star that's going to be North Star. 5,000 years from then, it'll be another star. There are 5 stars up there, and they're all named right here. 5 stars where the Earth is going to point. But what's incredible about this is the mathematics, which our people here on this continent were able to actually come up with and figure out that it takes this long for the wobble of the Earth. That's the third calendar. So some of you here heard about, maybe some of you just being born, you're probably young. In 2012, the world ended, right? Were you there? I was there. The world ended, because they said, because the Mayan calendar says the world's gonna end. That wasn't what it was doing. It was completing a count. That's all. It was just completing the count. The world didn't come to end. That's a Christian thing about these world ending. But that's all it was completing this count. That makes sense? You can't see it here, but there's a line. So why am I telling you about this? Why am I talking to you about all this? Part of it is to get out of these lenses that we have of the world, that there's really only one way to see the world, right? And why am I talking about this and naming this about the fourth dimension? Well, you don't see it, you don't see it, but there's a line here. Well, when you have a line, just a line, that's the first dimension, is it not? Some of you may be studying this in physics. I didn't take it, I don't know. It's just a line, right? When you take that and you move it like this, like we're looking at this is two-dimensional, is it not? They're trying to represent something three-dimensional here, but it's still just two-dimensional, isn't it? When you look at a painting, it's just two-dimensional. You can look at a photograph and you can see the depth in it, and you know that there's depth in it, but it's still just two-dimensional, right? So what is three-dimensional? Well, this is three-dimensional, is it not? It has complete, that's the third dimension. And the fourth dimension is time and space, is it not? It's time and space. But these are hypothetical constructs, right? But the Mesoamerican people already had an idea for this fourth dimension. And it's this symbol right here. It's one of the days on the calendar, Olin. Olin means movement. What is time and space? Movement, right? Ingenious. You have this very conceptual, very way out there abstract thought of something. It's this idea of movement. Indigenous people believe that the world is animated. Animated means alive. And the way you create, the way you elevate animation is movement. If something is stagnant, then it's not really moving, so it's not too alive. But if there's any kind of movement with it, then we begin to animate it. Now we have that origin, this idea of animation, right? So that's an indigenous concept. So why am I talking about this? So this is the fourth dimension. So you exist in the fourth dimension. You move because you move, just moving from one place to another. You are already now animating that. You're now existing in the fourth dimension. I'm talking about this because when we think of indigenous people, we think of them living in teepees and hunting buffaloes, right? Or maybe up here in the north, it's catching salmon. It doesn't occur to people that there was a level of sophistication here that was suppressed and stopped because it didn't coincide with Christian ideas of God, right? In true indigenous thought, there is no God. True indigenous thought, ancestral thought, doesn't have a concept of God. There is no God. It's certainly not something you would fight over. Like fighting over the Easter Bunny versus Santa Claus. It's that crazy. And I know some of you may feel some kind of way about this. But this is how we cloud our vision. This is how we color our vision. And then draw lines in the sand and then kill one another. Because we think we're right about things we make up. Right? This doesn't work. It's not working. And we're seeing this right now in Washington. With these people who happen to have a lot of money and think that this is the way the world should be, and it's very black and white, and it doesn't work. We've seen it over and over and over in history. You spend any time studying history, this isn't new. And that's why people didn't fight over this kind of stuff. You believe whatever you want to believe. It's as true as whatever I want to believe. I'm saying this because this is really important for us. If we're going to be able to survive on this planet, we can't continue to live like this. We have to find other alternatives. And I present this as a jumping, as a springboard, right? I'm talking from a very indigenous perspective about something very indigenous about right here where you are on indigenous land. I'm telling you, there were very intelligent, abstract thinking people right here who were pretty much erased and forgotten about, who had a very sophisticated science and mathematics. And for some of you in this room, those are your ancestors. And if I ask you, what do you call yourselves? Latino. Latino. You're not Roman. You don't come from Italy. Why do you call yourself that? Look in the mirror. Your face is brown. I promise you, you're not Spanish. I've been to Spain. You're not Spanish. You call yourselves Latino because the people that colonized your land happened to come from the Iberian Peninsula and spoke Spanish. But you probably have almost no blood. If you have black hair, dark eyes, and brown skin, you're indigenous, you're native. You may have forgotten after 500 years who those people are. But you have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing to be ashamed of. And that's true for all cultures all around the world. You have nothing to be ashamed of, and there is no hierarchy. There is no God up there. You're not going to heaven, you're not going to hell, you're just going to die. And what you leave behind is the legacy of what you do for the community and for the people around you. I'm a spiritual leader in my community, but I don't talk about God because I don't know anything about God, but neither does anybody else. What I do talk about are the relationships we have with one another. And those we can always master, those we can always do better. We can work towards something more cooperative, something that provides us a healthier relationship with one another, with the land that's around us, with the earth that we live on. We're not doing a real good job right now. And the ones that are going to pay for me are you and your children. Right? Do whatever you want. I'm not telling you what to do. But what I'm saying is we can do better. We can do better. But if all we're going to do is just struggle to make more money, think about this rich man, Elon Musk, who's destroying things across our country right now. It's taken us hundreds of years to arrive at this place of these social contracts of this is how we'll take care of each other. And he's just destroying them because he can. Not because he's given us anything better. He's just destroying it. And it's not perfect. We're not perfect in what we do. But we're striving towards something better. But just destroying somebody who's walking in the room and tearing it up because you can, how does that make things better for you? Right? And we can feel however we want to feel about the politics, about what side of the line we want to stand on. But at the end of the day, the real question is this really better? I don't think so. Is this familiar? Yeah, we've done this before. It's happened. Most empires last for about 200 years, and we're there. Can we extend that? Some of these indigenous communities lasted for thousands of years. I think we can do better. So I put this up there, but here I'll add one little thing for you that you can do. You can get on your phones, or you can get on your calendars, whatever. I mean, get on your computers, and you go to azteccalendar.com. And when you go there, it's going to ask you, you have to say yes to something that has to do with advertising stuff, or you're not a robot, right? But you're going to put your date in here, your birth date. When you put in that birth date, it's going to give you this information here, the date that you were born. And remember, there's a number associated with one of the 20 signs. This is Ordina, this one. And then it's going to give you the trecena, the 13 days, right, that you were born in. And it'll give you the year. Now, recognize that the year isn't fully accurate because it's not on January 1st. And it may be somewhere in March or somewhere, whatever account they're using. So this year may not be fully accurate depending on where you're born in the springtime. But you'll have the correct date because this doesn't associate with anything other than the woman's gestational cycle. It doesn't have anything to do with the cycles around the earth. So if you were to celebrate your birthday, you'd be celebrating every 260 days. That makes sense? So that you can actually do this. And I do this because so many people, particularly indigenous people, don't have a sense of who they are. Why do I use this? Why I'm telling you about this? Who cares about the Aztec calendar? It's just another calendar, right? But it gives you an ancestral connection. And sometimes we're so lost and so displaced as people, all of us, because of the world we live in. That's what it does to you. That you need to reconnect in some kind of way. So if you can start just by saying, you know what, according to our calendars, to the calendars of the people from here, from Mesoamerica, this is the Aztec, but all the Mesoamericans use it. According to this calendar, this is my birthday. This is my date. This is how I can play myself. It's like saying, I'm a Capricorn, or I'm a Sagittarius, right? It gives you something to connect. It has just as much relevance. whatever that means, right? In addition, you can go to another place, it's called OneRead. I think it's oneread.com. And in oneread.com, you can push this one, says Maya Aztec report. And if you click on that, it'll ask for some information. You put, this is free, you just click on it. It'll ask you this information, your birth date, your time, it asks you for an email address. And then what it will do is it will come back with a report that tells you that because you're born on this date, this is what kind of person you are. Like astrology does, right? Just for something to do. So those are options to you. Again, oneread.com. So that you have something tangible to go home with. And that's where I'm going to end this. And I'm going to just open it up for questions in case you have it. Yes.
I have this question the whole time, but don't take it the wrong way. I'm just curious if.
You're not going to offend me.
Okay. Like a lot of people say 13 is an unlucky number. Is this any way related to the?
Do you know what that's related to?
No.
Judah.
To what?
Judah. Judas.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How so?
12 apostle, he was the 13th apostle.
I'm not too religious.
Y'all don't read your Christian stuff, do you? I'm not a Christian, but I know an awful about it.
Sorry, I'm not too into that.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Thank you.
Yes. So yeah, it's 13 for us is it's a lucky number, but let me tell you another why. When we do the directions, the 7 directions, there are 7, right? East, north, south, and then up above, down below, and then there's the center. But in the center, you are the complement to that number 14. So we just use 13 to count them all, and you are the 14th. That makes sense? That's one of the things. If you count the articulations of joints that we have in our body, there's 13. If you count the holes into our body, there's 13. So it's a number that just repeats itself. So wherever it came from, it just happens to coincide with a lot of stuff. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So that's why it's a common number in Indigenous stuff.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I know that Mayan is a branch from the tribes in that area. So did they all go under the similar calendar? They had different.
So they're using the same count, right? So it's in essence the same calendar. We today we say Aztec calendar or Mayan calendar because that's the way we frame it, but it's just a way of counting. So they use the same count. Now here's what happened when the Aztec would go into some of the smaller communities and say you need to pay us tribute. They'd actually give them their calendar. And they say this is what day we're on today. You're going to use this calendar so that on this particular day you're going to pay your tribute, because they were all about showmanship. They were about performance. So you had to show up with all the things on this particular day that you were supposed to give in tribute, and they would make a big deal about it because they had planned for it and expected you to arrive that day. And if all these different communities arrived on the same day, bringing all this big stuff. So what they were doing is they had to follow a calendar, but what that tells us is that each community may have used the calendar differently and that they didn't coincide. This idea of coinciding is something that's really big in the Western world and in the Christian calendar that the world uses today. But it didn't always make sense to people out there. They didn't need to know when to plant. They knew when to plant, right? The women would like to know when the child was going to be born and when their cycles were. Those are important. The rest of the stuff is just stuff we make up, right? So they were arbitrary. Did they use the same calendar? Yes. Did they use it exactly on the same dates? Probably not. Yeah. Yes?
So you mentioned they reset the calendar at the
Yes, and that actually predated the Aztecs. That's an old site that predated, the Aztecs didn't come up until the 1300s. That site was already up there. So other communities that predated them were using it. Yes.
Sorry, I was just a little bit confused on how exactly you see it at that time and you have a specific day on the calendar?
Now we're setting the calendar at 0.
Okay.
So it's like this is January 1st.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So it's today we count it as February 22nd or 23rd because it moves. But they would say, okay, we're going to set the calendar at 0, but we don't know what the 0 point of the calendar is. We don't have a lot of that information. People came in and they just invaded, wiped everybody out, burned the books. you can imagine your library, all your libraries, they're just gonna burn all the books. I think that's one of the most egregious things we can do to any community is burn their books and their histories and their memories. Why would you do that? But they did. And so we don't have, we have less than 20 original documents from Indigenous people out of these books, out of these libraries of hundreds and hundreds of books. And these friars were really proud of themselves for burning those books. We have some of that going on in our country today. It makes no sense, but they do it. It's just information. Do what you will with it, right? Others, you had a question here?
Yeah, I just wanted mostly to ask you like what type of work you have done. I know you talked mostly about the calendars and all this, but also like what type of work do you do in your community, or like what role do you play?
So this is just a tool for me to make some points to you. It's a teaching tool, right? I don't need the calendar. I spend a lot of time working on it, learning. People would say things and I'd have to go back and challenge it. I wrote these books, but they are well-researched books. You can go into all the sources. I've cited all my sources. You have questions, you check it out for yourself. Don't believe me. Check it out. But they are well cited. What is the most important thing in that? I grew up in the Chicano movement, American Indian movement. They used to say a lot of things in these movements, right? We had our leaders and they're all saying these things. And I'd listen to them, and then I went to check it out and find out for myself. Eres Mexicano. So I went to Mexico. I lived there, spent time there. I was like, you know what? No soy Mexicano. I'm from here. Moreover, Mexicano is not a race. Mexicano is not a race. Being a Mexican is not a race. It's a nationality. So when we think of people, we're trying to subcategorize them here. There are four things we often reference. Race is one. Nationality is another one. So say you're a Mexican, but that's not a race. That's a nationality, right? If you're a US citizen, that's a nationality. If you're German, that's a nationality. We're talking about race. And then there's culture, and then there's ethnicity. And ethnicity is a group within a group. So if we think of the Cajun people in the South, maybe some of you come from there. It is an ethnic group within the South. That makes sense? So that's ethnicity. So when people say, well, what are you? Like, what are you asking? Let's be specific. Are you asking me my race? I'm Indigenous, I'm from here. Are you asking me my ethnicity, my nationality? And then some people have nationality to more than one country or one group. Indigenous people have a nationality to their community. If you're part of the Jicarilla Apache group, then that's your nationality, in addition to also being a US citizen. Does that make sense? Nationalities can be multiple. Ethnicities can be multiple. Even race can be multiple. Why does that even matter? Right? In some ways it matters because where I come from and the people that I regard as my community are important to me. And that's okay. Some people identify themselves according to how they choose to love, who they choose to have sex with, how they regard themselves by gender. And that's okay. That's not a reason to diss on someone, right? But that's what we end up doing. So what have I done? Coming out of the Chicano movement, I questioned everything. I went and found out for myself. And what I realized that the one thing that's consistent about me is I've always been an activist. Not because I wanted to be, but because I realized that the things that I do are intrinsically political. So what is the political thing I want to do to you? Empower you to be yourself. It's that simple. I want you to walk with your head up and proud about yourself. Not so proud that you trample on someone else's right to be themselves. But feel good about yourself. Be okay with who you are. But also respect that other people have that same right. That's it. That's what I do. And I've done it in all kinds of ways. I'm an artist, I'm a musician, I'm all kinds of things. But in everything I do, I'm trying to convey a message. It's a simple message. Be okay with who you are. One of my grandsons, let me say one more thing. One of my grandsons was saying the other day, well, I want to be better. I said, what does that even mean? How about we retrain that? We say, I want to have mastery over my life. Having mastery over the things that I do. That's not better. It's not on a scale of good or bad, but it's rather to acquire the mastery so that when I walk in the world, I walk in the world in a good way without doubt. That makes sense? Okay.
We have a question from the Zoom world.
Okay.
Leanne Ware, who says, you said that indigenous people did not believe in one God or a God. But I was under the impression that the Aztecs in particular had up to 200 deities that they worshipped. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. So if we take any person in this room and I ask you about yourself, you can start listing for me all the things that you do, right? And maybe your name is John, and we call you John, but John rides a bike. John paints, maybe John sings, maybe John's a teacher, maybe John's a father, maybe John's a son. These are all aspects of John. So all these different names in these deities, once you get to learn these, and you actually learn them, what you realize is each one of them is a personality or is a characteristic of something else. And there's something else that's larger that we call Ometeo. Something else that's larger is like an energy. I don't know how else to say it because it's not a god, but it's something that's intrinsic to the universe. But it's a characteristic of the universe. And the universe has many characteristics, just like John does. And you name those characteristics. John's left-handed. Okay, left-handed John, Huitzilopochtli, right? The left-handed hummingbird, or the hummingbird on the left. That's what that reference is. But that's not God. I mean, they're all John, but they're also aspects of John, right? So you have all these different deities, and what we're really trying to do is just reference a characteristic of nature, a characteristic of life. And we name it. And people interpret that as a god. Particularly if the way the world they come from, they're only gods. There's only one God or a couple of gods. Go ahead.
I don't know, I guess I just get kind of upset or I guess confused at what you're saying. I don't know, because
It doesn't matter what you believe. I'm okay with it. And
well, I guess what I'm saying is what I hear from you is contradicting what you're saying. So it's like I don't really know how to express what I'm feeling. I guess you're saying that I guess what I'm hearing is you're saying deities and then God, but you're saying that the characteristics of God are the deities, and people go wrong by claiming those deities to be God, which would be correct, but that doesn't mean there is no God.
So the issue is the language that we use. We don't have language to understand. So if we look outside, there's a little bit of sun shining, right? But it might be cold out. Those are two characteristics of the world right now. How do we name those? Right? So we give names to them. And it's a reflection of the larger world that we live in. And you may eventually take those and you worship really bright, sunny days. So we're going to call this Tonati, and we're going to worship this idea of a bright, sunny day. And so now suddenly it's a god. But it's not a god. It's only a god when outsiders perceive it as a god, or when you've been indoctrinated to believe in this idea of a god. What it is, it's a bright, sunny day.
Well, I agree, but I guess that's what I'm saying is I would look outside and see a bright sunny day and say, that's God. I'd say that's a part of God. That is.
And so God, as you're understanding it, God is much larger, right? You're using the word God. I don't use that, but
well,
yeah.
I'm using your word.
Okay, so we would say Ometeo. And Ometeo is this dual energy of the universe. But it's not a God. It's just this duality that we find that's consistent throughout the universe, this duality of, and we'll make it real simple and very binary, and we'll say masculine and feminine, right? This duality. That's not the way the world is. The world exists along a spectrum. Now we can get really, really very philosophical. Let me go off on a tangent here in a moment. So we have light and dark, and it's not really light and dark. We have light and shadow, absence of light, right? But they exist in the extremes, and when we think about that in a binary, then it's light and dark. But the truth is, and if you're an artist, You don't work in light and dark, because that's not art. You work in the grays, somewhere around a 5 or a 6. Because the grays are able to help you to give value to the light. But remember, when we're looking at something, when we're looking at these paintings, they're just reflections of light that our eyes pick up with colors and pick up reflections. But they're not the extreme. If it was complete black or complete white, it would make no sense to us. And so everything actually exists in the center. And what we find from an indigenous concept is that things move towards the center to create balance. And that's kind of what the creation stories tell us. If we can move to the center and it's not a perfect balance and it's not stagnant, instead it's a movement. And sometimes it veers off to one direction or another. But again, I'm doing this in a 2-dimensional, right? It's not two-dimensional, it's 3-dimensional. So things move off in different directions. And as they do so, they change things and it makes it unstable. And when it moves too far to an extreme, then it really makes it unstable and it tries to move back. That's just what nature does. So how do we name that? Is that God? Is that God intervening? For some people. God exists in so much as people believe in God. But in reality, there is no God. We create this idea of a God. You don't have to agree with me, that's okay. But what I'm saying is, be open-minded enough to realize that when we define something and say this is the color red and it's red and that's all there is to it, then we kind of gotten stuck and it doesn't move anymore and it's dead. When we name a flower, now it's dead. It's only a flower, but that's not the real life of that plant, is it? It started off as a seed, it blossomed, it created more seeds. There's a whole, it's always in a process of being and becoming. And that's an indigenous thought. But when we name it, we kill it. Right? So when we say God, then we have this idea, all of us have an idea of what God is. And now we've killed the movement of the universe. Rather than just let the universe become and be whatever it's supposed to be or wherever it's moving toward. That's a very indigenous thought, but it doesn't work in a binary. Because a binary makes things too simple. That's way out there. It's pretty philosophical, I know, but.
Yeah, her and then right here.
You can speak up, I can hear you.
Okay, first, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for starting with Indigenous language, you and the professor over there. I feel like it is so important to know what the language sounds like and to keep it alive, corresponding to the place that we're walking on and living on. I feel like that is so incredibly important. And also, I feel like when we have been indoctrinated with this Christian European frame of thinking, and we hold on to that, I feel like it becomes so incredibly difficult to deviate and to learn new things and to create more movement in our thinking and to expand knowledge. And the way that you presented this, it feels like a new way of acquiring knowledge that I feel like can only benefit everyone and is incredibly important. And I feel like when the way that European Christians have imposed their thinking has only created strife, and I mean, it's like a conqueror mindset, and just like how you said, and that's not, as you also said, it does not create life. I mean, it's not sustainable, and it's in so many things, like the depiction of a Christian calendar, how it's square, and there's pages, but in the Aztec calendar, how it's circular and it keeps on moving and it's continuous. I feel like it's connected to the way that that indigenous thought is. It's continual and it's reflected in the relationships that we have with each other. It's reflected in the way that we live with the earth, how we understand where we are in the universe. And I feel like those ideas are so interconnected and very important, and I want to thank you.
So let me comment on that. It's easy to get caught up in the idea, and even as I say, you know, Christian calendars, I'm not, do not misunderstand that what I'm saying is this is better. I'm not saying that. I'm saying these are arbitrary, we make them up. All the things that we do, ideas of God, ideas of politics, ideas of governance, all these, we make them up, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. And we enter into social contracts where we agree to live this way or be this way. But nobody likes to be told what to do. Anybody in here like being told what to do? I know some people are kind of kinky and, you know, for a little bit, but not for most of your life, right? Nobody really likes being told what to do. So if you don't like being told what to do, why would I tell you what to do? And why would you tell me what to do? Right? And so we can collectively come together with ideas, with social contracts that work for us. They're not going to work for everyone, and they're not going to work all the time. What I was doing back in the 60s and 70s in terms of social movements probably won't apply today. Some of the teachings, some of the things that we learned, some experiences may help you to do a better job as young people, but I'm not in the business telling you how to create the world you imagine. You have to find that for yourself. And we have to have enough grace to allow people to do that, to make mistakes and do things. And when we start imposing, even if the idea, well, the indigenous way is a better way, it's like, I'm not so sure about that. There are a lot of things we can pull from it. There are good things we can pull from it. But there are good things that we can pull from everything around us. And most indigenous communities have done that. I'm not wearing feathers. I'm not in the breechcloth, right? I look pretty, but you know, we can accommodate the world we live in. And we can accommodate the people that we live with.
Okay, we have one more comment here or question. Also, for those who are in my class at 12:35, you're welcome to go on to the next thing. Just be sure to sign in. We are going to have an extended session for those who want to stay. But in the meantime,
go ahead. You have a question? Come on.
Hi, my name is Leslie. I'm organizing this class. And my question is like, how can we break away from that thought? How can we live in a way that we can be authentically ourselves when the world keeps on changing and like there's all these people telling us not to be this, but like what can we do as people to identify on our community to grow and like take, as you said, take mastery over yourself?
So let me start by saying, if people say to me, what community do you come from? Or how do you identify? Or what group do you belong to? I want you to think about something. We can categorize me as indigenous, as being from indigenous communities in Colorado, New Mexico, as having some mastery over some of this information. But is this really a community? Do these really exist? Sometimes a community exists not because a community regards itself as a community, but because it's forced into a corral. Oh, the Black people of the US, right? We just now forced everyone into a category. Oh, all the Latinos, what's that? Right? But we're forcing people mostly by race, but sometimes by religion, sometimes by gender, sometimes by who they sleep with. And we start facing people. So now I'm part of the gay community. What does that mean? And what I found in the work that I was doing as an activist, that when we were doing work, and particularly doing work around gay men, that the only thing I had familiar with lesbian women was that we slept with the same sex. But what lesbian women were interested in and what they were doing and what their politics were radically different from what gay men were doing. But we're lumped together in community. Sometimes we are a part of community because people put us in that community. Why can't I just be American like everyone else? Because they won't let me. Because you put me into a community, now I have to respond to that. So sometimes our identity is a response to the ways we are labeled and the people around us put us into boxes. The question is, how can you step outside of that box and quit apologizing? Right? If you're going to do something that's grossly inappropriate and breaking social contracts and hurting other people, yeah, there's going to be pushback. But if you're just living your life and people don't like it, that's not yours to resolve. Let them resolve that.
We have one more question, but let's all, before, I know some folks got to be part, let's just give a big round of applause. Sign up on the way out. We'll see you May 1st down in the comment. We have one question, Brian.
So basically, what you've been describing here has been like the reversal epistemology and reversal ecology. And so, like, within that framework, there's sort of a European modernity, universality, inconsistent narratives. I want to know what are some sources or books that kind of cover universal like ways of being and like ways of knowing.
What? What? So what happens in academia is we get caught up in all these words. But at the end of the day, they're just words. We're once again labeling stuff, using big language to label stuff. But let's keep it real simple. How can you be yourself? How can you be yourself in this world that's telling you some other way to be? Right? Is that the question?
No, it's worse than you guys talk about like that. Yeah.
Well, so I'm not gonna suggest that there's one good source. If you read Bell books, you're gonna get some great information from Bell books. If you read some of the stuff that we do around understanding the world, getting away from the binary and into this idea, we have language for it, this idea of moving towards the center. Now, if you study physics,